Hi, and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Lou Meyer. This week, our guest is Will Dolman. Will, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Lou.
This is great. Will, you may remember or may not, was a guest on the show many years ago when we were talking about water quality and water testing here in the county. Why don't we do a little recap of that? So how are things looking on the water here now?
Well, the same things are kind of going on, and I was hoping the EPA found out about the problems in the treated water about 10 years ago, and as far as I can tell, they've really done nothing to correct the problem.
Can you tell folks a little bit about what the problems are right now?
Well, the problem with the treated water is a substance called bromate, which is a very small anion, and what happens is when they filter the water, they remove the larger molecules, which leaves more of the smaller molecules. And this is true too, like if you go to Briar Patch or any of these filter machines outside of the stores, they further filter the treated water, so then you even have more of this bromate in there. But it's good to take the stuff that you're filtering out, but then you have to treat the water to remove the bromate. The only way I have found is I run it through a slow cooker on high, 125 degrees for about 4.5 hours. And that will evaporate the bromate out because it boils at 110 degrees Fahrenheit, where water doesn't boil up until about around 200 degrees Fahrenheit at this elevation.
How does the bromate get in the water?
Well, I'm speculating. I believe it's getting in the water because of all the bromine gas that's being used. It's used in automatic welding rooms, robot welding rooms, which gets to be more and more of these days for making different things, motorcycle mufflers, so forth and so on. They pump this bromine gas in, and then it carries the fumes, the welding fumes out, so you're using a lot for that. It's in one of the chemicals they use for the fire retardant. Because it doesn't burn, and they can put it under pressure, so then it blows out of the bomber or whatever, onto the fire, and then they have fire extinguishers have it in there, and it's listed in the global warming book that I have, and as a bromine compound, and it says in there that it takes 110 years to break down. So if you even just think of fire extinguishers, and we're downwind from the coast and the Sacramento Valley, and you get all this stuff coming up here and going up into the upper stratospheres where these global warming gases kind of hang out, and 110 years worth, you can imagine there's quite a bit up there. And then what happened is that we come along with the oxidants in the gasoline, and these are going up there and adding one more oxygen to the bromine, and that's coming down in the rain. So I believe it's coming down in the rain, and then it hits our environment, and it likes to combine with different things. And one of those things is potassium, which a lot of the aquatic, animals or critters, whatever you want to call them, organisms, I believe is the correct word there, have potassium for their flesh, like fish. And we have potassium, too. So it combines with that, and potassium bromate is the more carcinogenic substance. So it's just raising our chances of getting cancer, and can be treated in the way that I point out. Of course, treated water, as it comes out of the tap, has twice as much aluminum in it as they allow in Europe. And in Europe, they have half as much Alzheimer's disease because of this aluminum that's left in our treated water. So if we had a higher standard on that, we would have only half as many people getting Alzheimer's. Now, of course, the other thing you can do is, filter the water. If you filter it even with a Brita filter, a simple filter, you can remove that aluminum, and then, and that'll give you a better chance of not getting Alzheimer's disease when you get older.
So, since we're talking about the air quality, and I wanted to get into your RAD hotline and talk about the radiation, because that's certainly one of the really important things to be concerned about now. Can you talk a little bit about radiation, and let's specifically start with Japan and the nuclear power plants and the ways that can impact us?
The the radiation levels, there's a thing called background radiation. Now, background radiation is the normal levels of radiation that we live in, like the average amount of radioactive particles that are hitting our body and hitting our cells and hitting our genetics, which could cause deformities. But there's a lot of these particles come through, and the more particles there is, then the greater your chance of a mutation of some kind, like a cancer or whatnot. And they've tied this in. Science has tied this in since the radioactivity has been around for a while. They've come up with statistics and whatnot, and they've had nuclear accidents, and the people downwind, and they've done research, and they've seen that when the background radiation goes up, that temporarily in an event, then you have that much more chance of getting a cancer. Say like yesterday it was 31% over normal background. So that would give you a 31% greater chance of getting a cancer. Now, of course, there's things you can do to limit the amount of particles that hit your body. And there's shielding. We all know about that. And that's kind of hard to do because what are you going to use? You're going to walk around in a lead suit. It's kind of heavy. So it doesn't work too good. But some buildings work better than others. Wood structures stop some radiation. And cement is better. 5 inches of dirt, I was told, shields radiation. And, so there's things you can do. Now, there's also the rain can also carry radioactivity. And they're saying, and because there's also in Japan, coming from Japan, there's more than just the stuff coming from the nuclear plant. There's stuff evaporating from the storage pools that are present at the plant. So these things are actually more dangerous to us than the radioactivity.
How does it get to us?
Well, a lot of the stuff that's coming off there now contains water vapor, steam. Mm-hmm. They're dumping all this water onto the rods to keep them cool. And, so you're getting a lot of evaporation. It's going up into the air, and then it goes up and gets into the jet stream. And the jet stream shoots it pretty much straight across, past Hawaii and then over to us. And then the jet stream will fan kind of up and down the coast, somebody said from like Washington all the way down to Southern California. And then it just continues around. The jet stream is one of the major streams that travel around in the upper hemisphere. And from what I've heard from people that do weather, is the jet stream usually comes to shore with some altitude. And that's another reason why it's important to have detection at this altitude. And I just happen to be in a real great location and just happened to check my background previous to this accident just a couple of months. So I kind of knew what the background was for both clear days and cloudy days. And the other one, I'll have to create an estimate, but the levels now are only 30%, 31% over background, where, in Japan, when they're talking about staying inside and taking your clothes off outside and then going in and taking a shower, they were at basically 100% of background, or twice the normal background level. Mm-hmm. And we're only maybe not even 1/3 of that. Now it's fluctuated up to almost 50% and came down on one 3 or 4 day event, which was last Tuesday. But other than that, it's been staying pretty steady around 30, 35 when it was raining, and down to 30 now. And so, I use this device I have and that I had gotten years ago at 3 Mile Island.
Is this a radiation detector? Is that what you'd call it?
Yeah, well, it is. It's called the Rad Alert. And at the time that I got it, I was living back east in this commune, actually in Tennessee. And the people I lived with were the people that did electronics at the farm there. And they decided, because the Geiger counter, only picks up real high levels, you're not going to get radiation sickness until like 30 millirems per hour of count, for 30 minutes straight, and then you'll start feeling sick. And that they call radiation sickness. So now some people may not get sick right then. This is just kind of an average they came up with. So this is when the Geiger counter goes off. Well, that's kind of late in the game, over 300% of background to be doing things to protect yourself. So they've created this device, and what they did at the time is they got together with the people that live in 3 Mile Island and around 3 Mile Island, and they created this network, and they put monitors all the way around the plant, and then they had satellite dishes that would send the information from the monitoring device up to the dish and then back down. So they had, in one location, they had somebody monitoring the levels, and then that way, when they had a leak of some kind, they could report not only how bad a leak, but which direction it was going. So they could evacuate people without having to wait for the government to come around and tell them, because they found that was, made it prohibitively late, in getting an evacuation of the right people. And so they created this network to gather this information so that they could protect themselves, which is, kind of what I think that would be good for us to do, is work together as a community to, gather the information. And some of us might be in a position where we could take a sample of some kind that might give us information. And on the rad read, what I do is I generally read the device, let it run on the total count. And what it does is that this device was made to pick up all the different types of radiation and radioactive particles that come from nuclear plants. And they hit this tube in the device, and then it counts the number of hits. So it's basically a particle counter. And so it's counting these radioactive particles that are hitting the tube. And you can think of, well, you're much larger than this little tube, as big as my thumb, maybe. Yeah. And so, you're getting quite a bit more, but they've been able to establish that even low levels of radiation increase your levels of getting chances of getting cancer. So, the way that you mitigate your levels is by staying inside a certain number of time, hours in the day, and that way you lessen your exposure to particles, and that way you won't have any greater chance of catching a cancer or something like that. Now, if you get an exposure to rain, they say that you should go in, take your clothes off and wash them, and go inside and take a shower. And I say that probably do it in such a way as you would do for poison oak or poison ivy, because then you're using just slightly cool water, not uncomfortably. You don't have to take a real cold shower, and just kind of wash get your everything wet, and then take some poison ivy soap or Fels Naphtha soap, which is a good old-fashioned soap, and soap up and wash off for like 10 minutes, and then you can turn the water up to whatever temperature you want and take a regular shower, and be sure to wash your hair.
Well, so that's not necessary to do right now, is it? We're not getting the kind of radiation that could affect you in that way.
Well, if you want to limit your exposure to radiation, then that is a good thing to do. There's also some stuff that's in the pond that's evaporating that is much more toxic than the normal radioactive particles that come from the reactor. And some of the stories I've heard of these things are pretty horrific, possibly, death within a week and stuff like that. But
are we close enough to the coast to be affected by the radioactive materials coming over now?
Well, we kind of lack any monitoring stations on the coast, so you need something to compare with. I'm working on getting hooked up to a network of people that have this device.
So this could be a little outreach right now then, if anybody locally happens to have a device that can it's not a Geiger counter now, right?
No.
What's the name of it?
It's a Rad Alert, and it's sold by International Medcom, which is in Sebastopol, which number is listed. Anyway, I'm sure they're doing quite well for sales, and there may be a waiting line for, devices. I'm not sure. But, I've been trying to get hold of my friend who operates the business for 2 weeks, and he has never been able to call me back. He's so busy. So, they're experiencing a lot of business right now with people wanting the alerts and whatnot. But without the background level, you really don't have much. That's why I was really lucky when I had this device. Once in a while I would turn it on, and then finally, about three months ago or so, I turned it on, and I found it, and and cleaning out some stuff, I turned it on and put a new battery in, turned it on, and then I became curious about what our normal background was. So I ran it for 12 hours, and I took the 12-hour count, divided it by 12, and then I divided that by 60 to get the average count per minute.
Uh-huh.
And then I took that number and I wrote it down, and I did this 3 or 4 times. And it was sunny some of that time, and it was cloudy other times. And when it was cloudy, then I got a little bit higher background. So the background basically runs from, I would say, 7.5 to 9 particles per minute average, depending on whether it's weather is raining or whether it's clear, or whether it's cloudy and it's clear, and I don't know, it's like 8.6. And then in the rain, I'm not exactly sure of the background. So, I have a pretty good idea how to figure out an exact level, one way or the other, but the levels haven't been that high, so I'm still researching it, because if I change the methodology I use, I really want it to be, the best that I change to. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm getting within a couple of percent probably of what it really is. So, for the levels we're at now, which is only like 30%, 31%, the method I'm using is pretty good, and I'm going to work to improving that, as time goes on, if it continues to rise.
Does this take into account like naturally occurring radiation, like radon that's in the ground or in the water supply or anything like that? Or is
yeah.
strictly speaking about air quality and air radiation in the air?
What it does is you can do a radon test with it. You do a 24-hour count. You put it under your house, and so you can do a 24. You can do a count for radon, but it's not the best device for detecting radon.
So something else for that. This is primarily to.
If you want to do a survey to see if you need to check for radon, which is more expensive, you could use this device to do a survey and determine whether your background is higher under the house than it is not under the house.
So some sort of regulation, something will tell you what you're looking for.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you double under the house or something, then maybe you want to test for radon. But there's a chemical test where you open up a canister and then you be explained by the laboratory that does the test how you should take this test. That you can test and get a more exact reading, of course, on it. But this detector was made for the type of radiation that comes out from these plants. But it won't tell us where the radiation is coming from. It could be coming from anywhere. Mm-hmm. Okay. But since the Japanese, they talk about an event on the television or something, and then we know we're like 4 days away by wind from Japan when the wind's blowing like it is now, and pretty much 100% of it has been going into the jet stream. So it's pretty much shooting across. Now this having the read line, I've learned some things because people call me and leave a message, and I call them and talk to them. And this one person that was a magnetic scientist called me, and she had a bunch of information about that the EPA right now is being told by the federal government that they are not to report any levels of radiation. And I talked to the nurse, I guess the head nurse of the county, and she said no, that they're giving her radiation levels, that there is none. So in order to comply with the wishes of the federal government and the demands of the health industry, I would say that they would probably have turned on a Geiger counter where they have much more accurate instruments available, of course, and that will detect background on up, like my detector, but they don't choose to use it because they're not supposed to say what the level is. And the reason that the federal government gives for this is that, we don't want to affect our economy adversely. And kind of like what I say is, well, so we're supposed to, kiss our baby and our children and our grandma goodbye and count our money or something? It's kind of ridiculous, really, because our health and our welfare, and our lives are much more important than any kind of money. That and to do something like that and I think it'll help our economy if there's people around afterwards to both make things and buy things, as far as
It would help
economy
if there
goes.
were people, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
we're getting close to the end of the show, and I want to. I know you have an event coming up, and you also. I want to give the phone number. So, if you give a daily report, is that correct?
Yeah, I give a daily report. I usually have it on there by about 10 a.m. now. I'm trying to get it on there earlier. In the past, I haven't been able to get it on there till about noon. It kind of depends on how many different things are happening that morning. But I try to get it on there now by 10 a.m.
Let's know what that
And
phone number
the
is.
phone number is 477-1698. Okay? And so you can call anytime, 24 hours a day, and get my recording and listen to it. If you want to leave a message for me, it tells you how to do that. And I leave notes on there from different scientific people who left information to me about how to limit your exposure. And if I could talk about just one of those very briefly.
Sure.
And when Chernobyl happened, there was one district just directly downwind. There was the target district. This is the bullseye, right? This is where it really hit.
Yeah.
And that district had no cancers and no diseases of any kind. And you say, well, how come? This is such high levels of radiation went there. But all the districts around there all had cancers and everything, and different diseases caused by this radiation that they got exposed to. So they went back, they spent a whole month, they couldn't figure it out. They went to a dinner, a potluck the citizens had. They were served this tea. They wanted to know what the tea was. It was very tasty. And the lady stood up and says, this is why we're so healthy. And the tea that these people were making and drinking was kombucha tea, which is just a tea that's sold you can buy in a health food store. And
You make your own.
You can
My
make your
wife
own.
makes
You can
it.
buy a kit in some health food stores that have directions on how to make your own at home.
It's a mushroom of some sort. And
A mushroom that grows in regular tea. And so I would say drink this tea, and avoid going out in the rain if you can. If you do get wet, then when you get home, you don't have to make a special trip, but when you do get home, you should wash off, as I had stated. It's a good way to do that. And keep an eye on, if you check the read line, there will be information as it comes in, possibly about other things we could do. There's also some research that we're trying to do of this fine powdery hail that's coming down out of this black kind of a cloud. I call it the black dragon cloud, but it's a cloud that looks kind of like that. And it's dropping this real dry hail. Usually hail that we see is like rock salt and it bounces off the pavement. This is like powdery, like laundry detergent, and it's spraying. And I'd like to get a sample of that into a container. So you can pick up a wide mouth container. You can buy one from Cranmer. I don't know if they do radioactivity as well. They either send it out or you can find another laboratory to do that. And I think that would be helpful. I think a volunteer to do the weather in 3 different locations and the wind direction would help us. I'm pretty much full with what I'm doing, but I could appreciate some other help from other volunteers. That would allow us to create a model and determine when the background levels are higher and do predictions about when it's best to stay in and when it's okay to go out, besides the ongoing monitoring.
And people can leave a message for you somehow or contact you through the RAD hotline.
Right.
So they'll have information. So if somebody wanted to volunteer or wanted more information about these tools or anything like that, they can contact you through that,
Yeah.
which is important to know. And now, what about this event that you have coming up?
Yeah, we're going to have a meeting on the 31st, which is Thursday, tomorrow. And it'll be at the Briar Patch Community Room, which is across the street from the college there, Sierra College. And the community room's right there on the right as you come to the entrance. And we're still going to try to have this fella that was an atomic scientist. He was going to come, but I haven't talked to him. When I leave here, I'm going to go do that, talk to him. Yeah, he couldn't make it because he has another meeting in Rancho Cordova and he's got work the following day. So I'm going to try to get him on the phone, though, so he can give his presentation on the phone and so people can ask him questions about different things on the phone, you know.
All right, well, if folks can't make it to your meeting, would you be willing to come back on the show again? We'll do a little bit more in-depth discussion of this and talk about some of the findings and do a little more outreach.
Yeah, sure, I do that. I was actually thinking of coming back and doing more on the water situation, you know, with some videos and different things where people can actually
Great.
see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so we
And
can talk
do
about
an
the water
update
and do a
then.
quick update on the red. And, you know, it's
Yeah.
always going to be important to know these things.
Right, right. Well, my understanding from different people I have talked to have said that we've got 2 meltdowns over there so far, and we don't know whether we can prevent. There's 6 reactors on site, you know, and there seems to be some design flaws. So what we need to do, the most dangerous thing for us right now is like Diablo Canyon and some of our own reactors that are on earthquake faults that are the same exact design as they have in Japan, which appears to be a bad design for serious earthquakes, you know, is what we're learning from this. And so we really need to do something about these reactors, you know, probably shut them down and come up with an alternative or move them off, at least off the earthquake site. And, you know, I've heard in the news that Germany is eliminating all their nuclear, and that's good news and a good example to us, in my view.
Well, thanks, Will. Thanks again for watching Reality Check. Thanks so much for coming
Sure.
on. We'll have Will on again in the future, in the near future, to talk about your water quality and air quality. And thanks for watching Reality Check. If you or anyone else you know might be a good guest for me to have on the show, you may contact me at loumeyer@nccn.net. Thanks again for watching. I want to thank our crew, Gail, Terry, Randy, I think is out there, Scott, Joe, Dell, and who did I miss? Ivy, Paul. Anyway, thanks to everybody for coming and doing. Who? Scott. Yeah. Thanks for doing the show. Thanks for watching. We hope to see you again next week.
Thanks for now.
Nevada County's In-Home Supportive Services program provides needed services like shopping, housekeeping, and personal assistance for seniors and people with disabilities. These services provide the independence for the persons being served and are delivered by family members, friends, or providers from the Public Authority Registry.
I can't understand someone having fraudulent behavior with the IHSS program. I mean, because you're entrusted with the care of someone that's disabled, and it's your responsibility to give them the absolute best care possible, and that's what's expected of you.
These services are important to many in our community. If you suspect someone engaging in fraudulent activity in Nevada County's In-Home Supportive Services program, then give us a call at 530-265-1639.
Seventh-day Adventist Church, Grass Valley, provider of Amazing Facts religious weekend programming, located at 12889 Osborne Hill Road in Grass Valley.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! We're broadcasting from the National Conference on Media Reform in Boston, Massachusetts.
We want to invest in the next generation of high-speed wireless coverage